He was an ordinary man, a husband, a father, living a quiet life in the frozen city of Anchorage, Alaska. Every morning he woke up at 4 a.m., baked bread, served his customers, and smiled. People in the neighborhood called him Friendly Robert, the most reliable baker on the block. But no one knew that when night fell, this man became something else entirely. A monster who turned the icy wilderness into the deadliest hunting ground in American history. His name was Robert Hansen, and this story will make you see your neighbor in a whole new light. Robert Hansen wasn't a criminal from the start. On the contrary, his past was a long chain of hidden wounds, masked behind a quiet, reserved exterior. Born and raised in the state of Iowa, Hansen had a troubled childhood. He stuttered, suffered from severe acne, and was constantly ridiculed by his peers. His father, a strict and demanding baker, frequently scolded him and forced him to work long hours in the family bakery. That childhood carved a deep psychological scar within Robert, a growing hatred toward the world, especially toward those he saw as beautiful, confident, and loved, things he never had. At the age of 21, Hansen was arrested for the first time for setting fire to a car garage simply because he hated how happy other people seemed. After spending a few years in prison, he was released, got married, and tried to start a new life in Alaska. In Anchorage, Hansen carefully rebuilt the image of a model citizen. Hardworking, quiet, raising 2 children, running his own bakery, and being friendly with the community. But deep inside his mind, darkness was growing stronger every single day. Robert began seeking out women who worked at night, not for fun, but to satisfy a range of deviant needs he could no longer control. At first he paid them, but soon he felt that wasn't enough. He wanted control, he wanted dominance, and began abducting them instead of negotiating. Later testimonies from surviving victims revealed that Robert Hansen often lured them into his car, took them to his home, tied them up, threatened them with weapons, and mentally tortured them for hours. But that was just the beginning. After he grew bored, he would take them to a private airstrip where he kept a small aircraft, a Piper Super Cub, capable of taking off from short runways. He flew straight into the Alaskan wilderness, an isolated expanse with no cell signal, no roads, and no one to hear you scream. There, in the deep snowy forest, Robert released his victim, like releasing prey into the wild. And then, he hunted them like animals. Wearing hunting gear and carrying a rifle, Hansen moved slowly between the trees, tracking footprints, listening for gasping breaths. When he finally spotted the victim trembling behind a tree, he pulled the trigger. One precise shot, like it was just another day on a hunting trip. But this wasn't a game. It was a calculated execution, one fueled by a deeply disturbed sense of pleasure. He believed that his victims were people no one cared about, so no one would come looking for them. Over the course of more than 10 years, he is believed to have killed at least 17 women. Some sources even suspect the real number could be over 30. In 1983, the wheel of Robert Hansen's crimes began to crack. Not because of a major mistake, but simply because one woman dared to survive and tell the truth. Her name was Cindy Paulson, and she was only 17 years old. That day, Hansen picked Cindy up off the street like he had done many times before. But this time, he seemed to be in a hurry. He tied her hands and feet, brought her home, locked her in the basement, and started preparing for his next hunt. But in a moment of carelessness, while Hansen was busy getting the plane ready, Cindy took advantage of his distraction, untied herself, and escaped from the house. Barefoot and without a coat, she ran for her life through the freezing cold streets of a quiet neighborhood, blood pouring from her wrists and knees. When she saw a truck passing by, she ran into the middle of the road, waving her arms in desperation. The driver, a man named Robert Yunt, stopped, helped her, and quickly drove her to the nearest police station. At the station, Cindy told everything: the layout of Hansen's house, a precise description of the small plane he was preparing, the guns, the chains, and even a marked map she had briefly seen. It was a detailed, logical, and extremely important testimony. But then, it was ignored. Because of Cindy's profession, a young woman working the streets, the police were skeptical, assuming she was making it up to stay out of trouble. They went to Hansen's house, but with his calm demeanor, willingness to cooperate, and no clear evidence, he easily deflected suspicion. To the neighbors, Hansen was still the kind, reliable baker, and Cindy was almost abandoned again, this time by the justice system itself. But then, the FBI got involved. An agent named John Douglas, a criminal profiling expert who would later inspire the character in the series Mindhunter, was brought to Anchorage to assist with the investigation into the string of strange disappearances. Based on victim profiles, locations where bodies were found, and the method of killing, Douglas quickly built a psychological profile of the killer. Someone with hunting skills. Owns a private plane. Quiet. Lives a seemingly normal life within the community. And most importantly, shows signs of deep psychological issues, likely stemming from childhood trauma. That profile fit Robert Hansen perfectly. From there, the puzzle pieces began to fall into place, and the darkness surrounding the kind neighborhood baker finally began to crack. Finally, when the search warrant was issued, the police entered Robert Hansen's house, and what they found was undeniable. Inside the house was a treasure trove of chilling evidence. Personal belongings of the victims, jewelry, wallets, and clothing that had been reported missing. A detailed topographic map of the Alaskan wilderness with dozens of red X marks, each believed to indicate a location where he had dumped a victim's body. A stash of firearms and hunting rifles, some of which were later confirmed to match bullets recovered from the victims' bodies. Under the undeniable weight of the evidence, Robert Hansen confessed, and what he revealed sent chills down the spines of investigators. In a cold and emotionless manner, he described in grisly detail the deliberate process he used to select his victims, targeting women he believed no one would look for. He recounted how he would kidnap them, hold them captive, and when he grew bored, he would fly them in his plane to a remote wilderness. Once there, he would release them like prey. And then, he would begin the hunt, following their footsteps, gun in hand, enjoying every moment of their fear and desperation, until he ended their lives with a single shot. His confession confirmed what many investigators had feared. These were not random murders, but rather a sick, human hunting game that he had repeated multiple times. In 1984, Robert Hansen was sentenced to 461 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. He was incarcerated at Spring Creek Correctional Center in Seward, Alaska. In 2014, Robert Hansen died in prison at the age of 75. In a cold and emotionless manner, he described in grisly detail the deliberate process he used to select his victims, targeting women he believed no one would look for. He recounted how he would kidnap them, hold them captive, and when he grew bored, he would fly them in his plane to a remote wilderness. Once there, he would release them like prey. And then, he would begin the hunt, following their footsteps, gun in hand, enjoying every moment of their fear and desperation, until he ended their lives with a single shot. His confession confirmed what many investigators had feared. These were not random murders, but rather a sick, human hunting game that he had repeated multiple times. In 1984, Robert Hansen was sentenced to 461 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. He was incarcerated at Spring Creek Correctional Center in Seward, Alaska. In 2014, Robert Hansen died in prison at the age of 75.